Welcome to the second and final video on the geometry of the Salar de Olaroz in Argentina. Today we will continue our exploration of the findings in this area. We are looking at another stone slab, which no longer resembles a slab. This section once formed a single unit. Due to the great heat when these plates moved on molten rock, some have disappeared forever and others show signs of melting. This plate moved from west to east, that is, from the area where the truss structure is revealed today. Let's take a look at the highlighted image in detail. In this part, the defect caused by melting is clearly visible. With a bit of exaggeration, we could compare it to chewing gum. The same defect can also be found in the western part of the Sahara, near a geological formation called the Eye of the Sahara. Here, the stone slabs are quite well preserved and bear witness to an event in which they were thrown out of their original place with enormous force. They subsequently moved along the molten rock. We have already explained that the initial cause was a global tsunami. The water instantly petrified, and the subsequent heat transformed the Earth beyond recognition. Everything that was preserved with limestone was preserved in its original state. And the Bible mentions the coating of stone slabs with lime, that is, liquid lime, burned at high heat to the consistency of stone. It is necessary to constantly remind ourselves of these facts in the context of the findings on Google Earth. But what's incredible about this section of the Salar de Olaroz are these dark lines that extend from the broken slab. There's a deformed urban agglomeration here. Everything that was on the slabs is now melted and scattered around. Let's take a closer look. In the lower left corner, some buildings are visible, which probably also belong to a mining company. But look at the number of paths. Some literally get lost and stretch for miles. It is very difficult to determine whether these are traffic routes or a heat-warped lattice structure. It is probably both. The entire area stretches from south to north. And here we are in the incriminated area, which looks more like a slush pile than a city. But the transport infrastructure is still clearly visible. Turns, roundabouts, intersections. The image is not very sharp. I will try to sharpen it a little in the program. Look at this. Do you see how complicated it is? Most of the roads suddenly disappear. We see some kind of crossroads, and all these lines connect places that were very likely once inhabited. They look like they were burned. And here's another part. Notice how the area on the left side of the image is very blackened. This area is probably a continuation, but it seems like everything is buried deeper in the rock. I will try to highlight this area. What appears on the surface is probably not everything. As in this image, we can also see geometric shapes deeper below the surface. The arrangement of the paths is certainly not original, but here again we find incomprehensible turns that end abruptly. Some are almost invisible, and I have to navigate also by the colors of the pixels. Wow! Here, these strange structures begin to disappear beneath the surface. This looks like another stone slab, but it's hard to tell for sure. It seems like something was covered up here. And another place. It really looks like a patch. There are again many lines that converge to these places. But look at this. There are regularly arranged bright spots. What is this? It is similar to the find in Antarctica. And here is another find. The place is again connected to other lines. Do you see it there? It's as if roads converge here, coming from nowhere. Here we are looking at a newly built road. Virtually all the lines that end abruptly in the area converge on this roadway. This road was built on something that had been here for ages. Look at this. It's complicatedly branched. And here we are looking at the same situation. Everything is connected to a new road. The lines probably connected to the main support beam that was preserved here. You can see that the roadways are not touching. So these are not traces of modern trucks. The roadway was built on one of the preserved beams, as in the case of the road through the Everglades. This is the original preserved girder that now serves as a road across the Everglades. Building a road in another area would be problematic because of the wetlands. In the picture I have highlighted the places where the original girders were located, which were connected to the main girder at these points. Look at how many traces of supporting structures there are here. Everything is pointing towards the new road. And here it seems we're looking at another piece of a breakaway settlement. There are buildings on the bottom left. It's as if someone is guarding these places, right? This reminds me of a situation on a remote lake in Chile where incredible things are hidden. The area is quite far from civilization, but a police station has been built near this lake. Unbelievable. Something is happening here. You can see the surface being disturbed. Maybe minerals have been found here. And look at those little piles. They're found in many places on Earth. And mining machines are removing them. Let's look back at the city we saw. Do you see them there? They are a kind of calcareous drops that cover some places. You can find them along the Nasser Canal in Egypt, for example. And I have even seen them being removed from circular fields. Is there really a message in this picture? Or are these circular cities buried under limestone formations? But that would also be a message. But let's take a look at the western side of the salt marsh at the beam structure. The structure is well preserved in the circle because it was well protected by the limestone. These fragments are found all over the area. You can see them as irregular rays in the rock. Strange, as if the salt marsh was blown away from the west. Maybe a very hot gust from the sun. It is possible. The same is found on the south side of the later uncovered truss structure. However, many of the structure's crossbars are missing. We look at the temporary buildings of the mining company. Next to the gigantic water tanks, they look like pinheads. Imagine the slabs that lay on this structure. Water channels were cut into them. And the whole thing looked like a beautiful image from above. The same thing is located on the south side. I will try to add the partitions. I added the partitions in places where there are protrusions like the remains of beams. In some cases, these protrusions are used to erect electricity poles so that they do not get in the way. I have an idea. Since the Bible mentions basalt, try to think for yourself. Basalt can withstand very high temperatures. The melting point of basalt is between 1100 and 1250 degrees Celsius, which is between 2012 and 2282 degrees Fahrenheit. But in many areas of the Earth, we see these beams twisted and melted by the heat. But here they were not melted, as in other areas on Earth. They were simply cut off. And what is this? Can you think of something? Yes, we know this from modern river basins. You can find it anywhere on Google Earth, and in areas where it's humid, these shapes are green and have water flowing through them. We call them meanders. But how did they form? This is an identical shape in Nevada captured in a depth screening. To be honest, it looks very strange. It looks more like something was torn apart by the intense heat. Is it possible that something has collapsed here and created a furrow for a new riverbed? If you have an idea, write it in the comments. Here we have another of the load-bearing beams, and it looks like limestone is blowing through the gaps between the cross beams. Strange. And again something like a future meander. But there is no water here yet. The other end of one of the many supporting beams. There is also something hidden on the left. And here is one protrusion. It's the remnant of a torn-off side beam, and you can clearly see its mark. Of course, there are more of them, and this is only a microscopic fraction of the gigantic global supporting structure. Now I'll show you a few more interesting places before we return to the circle. One of them is here, and it is very likely the place where the gigantic column sank in. It is very hard to see, but there is a center with 3 pools, and rays radiate from this center. These pools are widely found in Australia and serve as watering places for livestock. The very center with the pools marks the anchoring point of the truss structure. The fact that there is water in them suggests that the columns were very likely hollow, in the same way that the Egyptians built them, for example. And there is a second buried pillar. Do you see those radially diverging lines? And in the middle is the anchor point of the entire structure. It's absolutely identical to the watering holes in Australia. If you look around, you must notice a salt marsh that seems to have been blown away. It is probably salt mixed with limestone due to erosion. However, the view is bizarre, as if we were looking at a delicate veil. Now that we have discovered traces of the so-called Pillars of Hercules, because these are the real mythical Pillars of Hercules, I will add a few more pictures. The images come from New Mexico, and here we're looking at these columns from over 12 kilometers up. That's about 7.5 miles. They're gigantic. Plus, we can clearly see the anchor marks here. And these places are still connected by the truss marks. I'll highlight the image. These columns are also still connected. Do you see the traces of the anchors? However, not all of the columns are nearly as well preserved. Some appear deformed and torn, as in this image. But let's go back to the circle, where we will say goodbye for now. Plato's concentric circles and bridges. There are probably many more of them on Earth. Salar de Olaroz lies on a plateau at the foot of the mountains. And we'll see what it looked like here before the mine opened. When we go back in time, we see a strange landslide that literally copies the circle. There are many of these strange landslides in the Andes. Like this one, for example. It has a perfectly circular shape. But there weren't just circles. You can also find stars, or fragments of stars, all over the world. But that's another topic. For now, I say goodbye and enjoy the sunny days.